Let us pray. Our understanding of your word comes from you, O God. Open our ears and our minds and our hearts to hear what you would have to say to us. Help us upon hearing to understand, and upon understanding to act. In Jesus' name, amen. Reading from the second chapter of the Gospel according to John, first 11 verses. This is at the very beginning of Jesus' ministry. He has called some of the disciples up to this point. On the third day, there was a wedding in Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you or to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you." Now standing there were 6 stone water jars for the Jewish rites of purification, each holding 20 or 30 gallons. Jesus said to them, "Fill the jars with water." And they filled them up to the brim. He said to them, "Now draw some out and take it to the chief steward." So they took it. When the steward tasted the water that had become wine and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, "Everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk. But you've kept the good wine until now." Jesus did this, the first of his signs in Cana of Galilee, and revealed his glory, and his disciples believed in him. Word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. You know, they say that timing is everything. For example, as the story goes, 2 friends are in a bank one afternoon when suddenly armed robbers come bursting through into the lobby, waving guns and yelling for everyone to freeze. Some of the robbers turn their attention to taking money from the tellers. The other robbers line up the customers along the wall, including these 2 friends, and begin taking wallets and phones and other valuables from each of them. And while this is going on, the first friend jams something into the hands of his buddy. Without looking down, the buddy whispers, "What is this?" The friend whispers back, "It's the $100 that I owe you." Timing is everything. There's the screenplay in football where the quarterback waits until the very last second before being tackled to throw the ball to the receiver. There's the proper minute to turn the meat on the grill. There's the point in childbirth when the doctor says, "Push." There's some days when it's time to sell, others when it's time to buy. Someone has said, when the timing is right, people laugh at your joke, gasp at your entrance, or smile radiantly in response to your proposal. And when the timing is off, they're just as likely to gasp at your joke, smile at your entrance, or laugh at your proposal. There was a certain wedding in Cana of Galilee when a timing appeared to be way, way off. Weddings in that culture were markedly different from weddings in ours. In that culture, the focus was on the groom instead of the bride. The groom's family hosted and financed the event, and the occasion was lavish. It was a huge celebration that lasted anywhere from 2 or 3 days to an entire week. Hospitality was expected to be over the top. In fact, the reputations of parents and grooms rose and fell based on the level of their generosity showered on their guests. Disaster loomed at that wedding in Cana because the wine was depleted. And to run out of wine at a wedding feast meant more than guests slipping out early. It meant the party came to a grinding halt. It meant the end of joy and gladness and the beginning of agony for the groom's household. Running out of wine was nothing less than a catastrophe. It's in the midst of such an approaching disaster that the mother of Jesus gets his attention. They're out of wine. So, asks her son, "What does that have to do with you and me? My hour has not yet come." But his mother tells the servants to do whatever Jesus tells them. Jesus instructs the servants to fill 6 30-gallon stone jars with water. They fill the jars to the brim, 180 gallons in all. Then they take a bit of it to the chief steward. Somewhere in that process, the water becomes wine. The steward proclaims it to be the finest wine. And because he didn't know that Jesus had performed this miracle, he praises the groom for the uncommon practice of saving the best wine until the last. Timing is everything in John's gospel. He wrote his account much later than the other 3 gospel writers, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, perhaps as many as 40 years later. His order of events is different, arranging them not so much chronologically, but theologically. It's important to John that Jesus says at the very beginning of his ministry, "My hour has not yet come." Jesus will say that same thing a couple more times before his death and resurrection. John's way of telling his readers to pay attention to the intriguing and in many ways mysterious story of this man. It's like none other. The first sign that Jesus performed in John was not a big public event. While it was a big celebration, it was a private wedding. And while it was a miraculous turning of water into wine, Jesus did it on the quiet, as it were. No brilliant light on a mountaintop, no heavenly drum roll. The servants knew the source of that fine wine, but the groom did not. The elaborate work of God took place in the midst of that household, right under their noses. The unimaginable generosity of Jesus was off to a roaring start. As one commentator writes, the gifts of Jesus extend well beyond meeting the needs of the moment for health or safety or food. In this story, those gifts encompass the celebration of life itself. That is to say, the sheer abundance of the gifts Jesus brings to humankind extends beyond what any human being can ask or think or comprehend. This is but the beginning of the story. That story and the abundance of those gifts and the workings of God continue in our midst. The ancient Greeks had 2 perspectives on time. One is what the Greeks called chronos. It's where we get our word chronology. It's how we sequentially mark our lives in minutes and hours and days and weeks and months and years. The second is what the Greek language refers to as kairos. It means an opportune time, that perfect moment or season for something particular to happen. Kairos time transcends the calendar. Kairos time is God's time. The wedding at Cana was an event on the calendar, no doubt circled in red for many months by the bride and the groom and all of those families and invited guests, including Jesus and his mother and disciples. That wedding was also Kairos time. It was a moment when Jesus revealed who he was as the Word made flesh. It was an opportune time to show just how extravagant God's grace was going to be through Jesus. It wasn't just a Boda box of wine that day. It was 180 gallons of the finest French Bordeaux. We just celebrated the baptisms of Wendy and Nate and Avery. It's been an event on the calendar for some weeks now, a day that was selected so that family and friends could join us for the celebration. At a deeper level, those baptisms today are part of God's time, a Kairos moment. It's a recognition that God has been and is and will be at work in their lives. And it's a reminder to them and all of us that God continues to work right under our noses. As the Islamic poet Rumi once wrote, each moment contains 100 messages from God. Each moment contains 100 messages from God. The invitation to us in this season of Epiphany and in every season is to be alert and on the lookout for those Kairos moments. Timing is everything. We remember Martin Luther King Jr. this weekend. The legacy of this Baptist minister and leader of the civil rights movements of the 60s is well established. But it's more than a little sad when it seems that this nation has taken 1 or 2 steps forward and 5 or 6 back in the effort to end racism over these last 50 years or so. Reverend King mentioned timing in his letter from the Birmingham City Jail. Here's part of what he wrote to his clergy colleagues. While confined here in jail, I came across your recent statement calling my present activities unwise and untimely. But I'm in Birmingham because injustice is here. I cannot sit idly by in Atlanta and not be concerned about what happens in Birmingham. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. He wrote, we're caught in an inescapable network of mutuality, tied in a single garment of destiny. Whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. Never again can we afford to live with the narrow, provincial, outside agitator idea. Anyone who lives inside the United States can never be considered an outsider anywhere within its bounds. Frankly, I have yet to engage in a direct action campaign that was well-timed in the view of those who've not suffered unduly from the disease of segregation. For years now, I've heard the word wait. It rings in the ear of every Negro with piercing familiarity. This wait has almost always meant never. We must come to see that justice too long delayed is justice denied. Perhaps it's easier for those who've never felt the stinging darts of segregation to say, wait. Continued. I have just received a letter from a white brother in Texas. He writes, all Christians know that the colored people will receive equal rights eventually, but it's possible that you're in too great of a religious hurry. It's taken Christianity almost 2,000 years to accomplish what it has. Teachings of Christ take time to come to earth. Such an attitude stems from a tragic misconception of time, from the strangely irrational notion that there's something in the very flow of time that will inevitably cure all ills. Actually, time itself is neutral. It can be used either destructively or constructively. More and more, I feel that the people of ill will have used time much more effectively than have the people of goodwill. We must use time creatively in the knowledge that the time is always ripe to do right. Now's the time to lift our national policy from the quicksand of racial injustice to the solid rock of human dignity. Chronologically speaking, Reverend King penned those words in 1963. In Kairos time, it was an opportune season of great importance and witness. That's why we pause to remember his work, to be reminded that the struggle for equal rights is a very long way from being over. God is at work here and now, and God invites us to adjust how we tell time, invites us to sync our clocks with the divine. God reminds us that the time is always ripe to do right. May it be so.